We're going to start. The Town of Bay Harbor Island Special Council meeting is called to order. If everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Yap.
Here.
Councilmember Chicoche.
Here.
Councilmember Sarver is here.
Here.
Councilmember Reed.
Here.
Councilmember Fuller.
Here.
Vice Mayor Bruder. Here. Mayor Leonard.
Here.
All present.
Great. So, we only have, I was going to say, we only have one discussion item, so, because it's only one item and there's no, good and welfare, I would say, just for the record, before we start, anyone that's going to speak, I think it would be proper to give everyone that wants to speak 3 minutes to speak. So we have that set on the timer. And what we're going to do is, once we start talking, we're going to have the opportunity to have everyone in the council ask questions with the manager, and then we're going to open up for public comment. So, Mr. Manager, the first one, please.
Item 1, discussion and possible action requested by Councilmember Reed regarding procurement procedures. You have ample papers in front of you, and Kelly, it's all yours.
All right, Councilmember Reed.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming. I really appreciate it. It was, an emergency situation that I perceived, and the staff put a lot of paperwork together, and I appreciate all of that. I have some serious concerns about the way in which we generally follow or fail to follow our procurement ordinance. And over the last couple of years, there have been a few examples that come to mind. Last year, we talked about the air conditioning bid here for Town Hall, and the way that the selection process happened, and it caused me to start looking into some examples. And so I just pulled, a few, especially the high-ticket ones. You're going to see in the packet, there's some information on one of our vendors named Tri-City Electric. And then at the November meeting, we talked about a $38,000 expenditure that was done on an emergency basis. And the more, it was a little disappointing at the time, but the more that I looked into some of the details surrounding that particular company that we've been using for a while, I just find in general that we're really not giving opportunities to compare prices. In our code, we have different threshold levels. The manager is empowered to, for certain thresholds that are low, he's empowered to procure things. Then there's a threshold over $10,000 where the council has to approve, and there's a few exceptions here and there, emergency being one exception, emergency being defined as a safety issue. So I wanted to have this discussion in the open with my colleagues in a civil manner. I appreciate that this meeting actually took place because it required to have the support of the council, and I'd like the manager to just give an overview of basically how it is that we find our vendors, especially for the high-ticket items, and a brief synopsis of how the procurement code is followed.
Can I ask a question before he begins? Thank you. Are we here to discuss the code? And if we don't approve of the code, are we here to discuss the changing of the code? What is the goal of this meeting exactly?
Okay. Well, really the purpose of the meeting is, I'm not an auditor. I'm not an investigator. But the charter of Bay Harbor does empower each one of us to do research and investigation to look into going further. So that's a very good question, because after we have our discussion, we have a lot of options. We have an auditor right now, our annual audit is taking place. But even the letter that we get from the auditor specifically says that it's very limited. He's not looking so much at procurement as he is accounting practices. So I've had a conversation with the auditors, and they're aware of my concerns, but possibly we may opt to do our own independent audit of some sort. We may ask an agency to do it. If we do change the code, I would say that we should make the code more prudent rather than, and a little tighter rather than looser.
And before we begin, because I just want to keep this clarified in my mind, when did we write this? When was the code changed? Because
2009.
2009.
Correct.
And have you looked, because before, I want to keep it clear in my mind what the code is to make sure that in 2009 we changed the code and we added, or we...
It was completely added. Alan can talk about it, but there was a desire to have procurement procedures in place, and Alan can tell you exactly why. And I believe he was very instrumental not only in asking for it, but drafting it as well. You know, we looked at all the data, we looked at everything provided, and the Office of the Town Attorney has already given an opinion, which is in your packet, that all the items brought to the attention of the Town Attorney, including everything we have in our packet, which is 290 pages, we determined that Ron complied with the code, and specifically the open-ended procurement. If you want to make a change to that, you certainly can. You can certainly say that open-ended procurements shall be rebid on a date certain, but that's not what we have presently. So if the purpose is to talk about the code and what could be changed and things that you may like, I've dealt with this issue in many different towns and cities on conflict basis for Weiss Serota, and I've dealt with these items extensively because they come up all the time. Our code, the way it is, provides for these open-ended procurements which can go on in duration for as long as one likes, so long as it's terminated by the town at any time without cause. So if you have a vendor who you love, and this happens in most cities, you know, there aren't a lot of vendors for certain things, and certain vendors are used for a long period of time. And I'll give you the analogy of attorneys. Weiss Serota handles lots of towns and cities. We've been here for a long time. It's similar to an open-ended contract. We haven't changed our rates, and I've been practicing now 20 years. And you know, when you have vendors who do good work, who are cheap and competent, you know, cities and towns like to stay with them because you're getting the best price and you're getting people who know your towns and what you do and your equipment and your procedures, and you know, it's very helpful. But you could also, here for open-ended contracts, if you wanted to, you could certainly put a duration of time in which they'd have to be rebid. And that's one way of addressing the open-ended procurement, if you wanted to. I've done it for other cities and towns, and some others don't want to do that, because then what happens is, for example, I represent Swire. Swire did all the, and I'm on the board, and Swire built the city center. When they had a landscaping company. They're called Tip Top. When they rebid it, Tip Top said, "Oh, we haven't changed our rates in 13 years." So when they rebid it, they actually got higher rates and had to actually assess a little bit for the for their development with regard to that. So, you know, some folks want to have those kind of time limits and some don't, because sometimes when you rebid it, even your own vendors will increase their prices. So it's really up to you all.
I have a question, Mr. Simone. So, like you said, right out of the code, open-ended contracts, if they're expected to exceed $10,000 a year, which this particular example definitely is, we're looking at expenditures of roughly $600,000 in the last 3 years, for example. Some of that work was on the bridge. Some of it was for smaller things, light bulbs and other jobs around the town. It's still subject to the competitive bidding requirement, right?
Not necessarily. It depends when it was bid. It depends how it was contracted, and plus the town council has the ability to waive and not require it in some instances as well.
Is that written in the code?
Absolutely.
Frank, if I could, I know it's been mentioned, the $600,000, and that is a lot of money, there's no doubt about it. But during the budget process that we all go through every year, we put in the code approximately, or our best estimate, what our expectations are, what we're going to spend, and that goes across the board. In electric, the last 2 years, we've budgeted almost $200,000. The year before that, it was a sizable amount. So, yes, we spent close to $600,000, but we also budgeted for it and expected to spend that money. A lot of the money that, a lot of the things that were done were one-time expenditures, such as, like you said, work on the bridge, the Sun Pass, gantry conversion when we took down the toll plaza, 98th Street Park, sometimes emergency work where the air conditioner, as was mentioned before, when we were hooking up an air conditioner, the elevator system. There's just a whole host of things. And as I said, the Tri-City's been with the town for a long time, and as far back as I can look in our records, our computer records show that back to 2006, we were always spending well over $10,000 for that. I know it's easy to read the code and interpret it that you should bid this out every year. I never did, and I've been here 10 years, and I followed the practices of the managers before me. I didn't decide to do something different. I followed along that policy or practice. The code was a policy, by the way, when I got here, and it was in 2009 that this policy was converted into the code. And that was really it. I've always read it that when you're picking a vendor to get Tri-City, say it's somebody else, at that point, when you're trying this, you want an open-ended procurement contract or agreement. Open-ended means it's long-term. You need three bids, or you want to get other people in to bid. And Alan, I'm sure, can answer this better than me, but the idea was you didn't want the manager to be able to, on his own, select anybody he wanted. But once the selection was done, you had somebody in place that could be terminated at will, or the agreement. That's the way it's written. I did not write this. I'm just working with it. As Frank pointed out, I know the code, has idiosyncrasies in it. This council, since I've been here, has tweaked this code dozens and dozens of times, from signs to fences to the heights, all different things. You look at it, we can have a code provision that has existed for 25 years, and then something happens and it comes to, something goes on and say, hey, you know what, we really got to fix that, or we want to change that. And I know everybody here knows how we do that. We put it up for, hey, I want to discuss, I think we should change something in the code. It's discussed, and if the council wants to change it, we change it. Usually from staff, when it comes to changing the code, the staff is pretty laid back. We very rarely will have a disagreement with the council. It's, go along with what you want to do. It's, the way it is. Unless it's something really off base, but that's very rare, and in my time here, that's almost never happened.
I have a question, Ron.
Sure.
Would you prefer, since a company like Tri-City, you consider the town's electricians, would you prefer to just have an electrician on staff?
Well, truth be told, I've been trying to hire an electrician to the town, and particularly the one that services the town now, for two reasons. One, he's very highly reliable. In the 10 years that I know this person, you can call him up, he'll be here. He works well with the staff, but really more importantly, for the town's benefit, his institutional knowledge where everything is, he's basically wired everything. He doesn't need to look at a map to find something. He knows he's installed most of it. So, for that reason alone, I've been trying to lure him away to us, and I'm pretty close to getting there. And to be honest, because even something we're talking about, just a regular electric work, Mike is really an integral part of the maintenance of the bridge. All the electrical workings of that bridge is maintained and really looked at by Mike. When the bridge gets stuck,
Yeah, he's the guy that can...
he's the guy you call.
Yeah, he's the guy that
And he's
comes
there in a half hour, and he's the guy that saves your butt getting the bridge down.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times over the years that's happened. And so to the simple answer is absolutely.
And what do you think an appropriate salary for an electrician like that would be annually?
I wouldn't want to tip my hand, but it would definitely be less.
Range?
I don't know,
Less than what we're paying, certainly.
70,000? Or-
Maybe.
Mike is, you want a certified licensed master electrician. I would put him anywhere from 70 to 85,000.
Well, you're talking about institutional knowledge, and I understand the value that he may bring, but, at some point in time, he may become unavailable. So to what extent is his knowledge, put down on paper or, plans drawn so that if he's no longer available, whoever replaces him, whether it's as an employee of the town or an outside contractor, would be able to, have the
Succession planning.
Knowledge of-
Succession planning.
succession planning.
He currently works right now with I think it's called an apprentice, or not a journeyman, but another title. A journeyman, or a lower rank. And I would definitely bring somebody to train with them. If at the time you were going to retire, you would bring somebody on to do that. If you were going to have somebody on staff. Usually, what I have found, when people retire from here, I'll take a good example out in the toll plaza when Fitzroy was going to retire. He was there forever. Knew the place cold. He stayed on as a contract employee. When we brought somebody else on, worked with him, we paid him a rate, and he got the next person up to speed, and then after 6 months, that was it. And it would depend on, I'm not saying you couldn't hire, you don't have to hire this person. It would be really helpful. I actually, in the budget, had money set, or had money put aside for having someone to maintain the bridge. I really want somebody knowledgeable that knows the full operation of the bridge. And this person would fit that bill, but it doesn't have to be that person. It would be very, very helpful to us, though, if it could be.
Yeah, I would think if you did that, you would, properly advertise the position and entertain anybody qualified. You could get somebody even more qualified, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you could always do interviews, of course. I would rather, you're asking me how would I hire him? I've been...
As long as we're talking about it.
I would try to get the person I really want for the job. I don't know if it's necessary to have an advertisement for a job like that, but if it is, I would do it.
Since we've had, the use of the electricians for a long time, obviously some jobs, few, are bid out as a scope of work versus the time and materials.
That's true.
And the time and materials seems to be a very pricey way to do things, and a little maybe out of our control, because you're depending on the speed of people, and sometimes you have more than one.
I haven't found that to be true, actually. Mike, or a lot of the work that Tri-City does do for the town falls under general maintenance, and if you look through your procedure, look at the thumbnail printout of the invoices, which can be a little bit misleading, because an invoice that's printed out only has a very limited number of information that could be put for you to look at. Like, one invoice can have 4 or 5 different things that the electrician addressed and is billing for, and unless you pulled out the timesheet and went over it that way and looked at everything that they did, which is what we do, you wouldn't be able to do that. In 2011, and I don't know that it was done before that, in 2011, I had Public Works solicit 7 or 8 electrical firms for hourly rates to give service to the town of Bay Harbor Islands for regular daytime work and then overtime and holiday. Tri-City was the lowest, and I didn't do that in 2011 because I was dissatisfied with Tri-City's electric's work. It was just I was interested to know if the hourly rates were competitive, and they were. In 2017, obviously when this became, and not an issue, but it was being looked at, I asked Public Works to do the same thing, and the price differential that Tri-City it's in your package, it's considerable, the hourly rates. I mean, they can go very high. I think so far, Tri-City has served us well. I would hate just to reject them, or, we have to get rid of them, they've been here too long. I am certainly not somebody who would suffer a bad contractor. I don't need that. So, I think Frank said before, the open-ended agreement. It is interesting the way it's written. I think we have plenty of contracts with different contractors in the city. Brightview, Solid Waste, some of engineering firms, and they do time out at a 5-year or 4-year term, and then they have some provisions to extend if we'd like to. I think that would be something that probably would give everybody a lot of comfort to know that every 3 or 4 years we will go out and bid this out. Again, as far as I could see in the record research that I did, no one had done that. I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't done 20 years ago or sometime. We just couldn't see it. And again, we were operating on the policy and the code as it's written.
Are there any other significant sized vendors who work for time and materials?
Not to my, I have to
only
think
one,
about it. Tri-City would certainly be, I would think, the largest at this time. I don't know, I don't want to put Alan on the spot, maybe he would know, but I really, off the top of my head. But, well, I was going to say Brickman, but do we have a contract with that?
And just for everyone's edification, Brickman works for time and materials?
No. Well, in that contract, we do have
Set prices.
set prices for different things. So we budget for, like just recently, a call went through the median on the home island and tore out some of Island Ficus, some Crotons, and, nobody saw who did it, but we had to replace it. It's going to cost about $2,800 to replace those plants in the size till, it's repaired. So I can tell you, I know how much I'm going to get charged for different things, and I budget accordingly.
So you're pretty confident about the hourly rate, even though we don't always bid a job. What about the rate for materials? How do we know? Do they just give us the rate? Do we bid out the rate for the materials? How do we know we're getting good price?
We look at the prices as they're supplied to us. If there's anything out of whack, we would question it.
Well, how do you verify that?
It's in here.
I'm asking a question.
No, I'm saying
so the
time
audience-
and materials. It's
Materials, though.
It's in here.
yeah.
We'll give them the answer. Well, it's a lot of money.
Well, actually, you know, we can always look to see if there is a price that is out of unusual or something like that. I don't have
Do
any...
a peripheral review is what you're saying.
Yes, every expenditure is reviewed. First of all, it's reviewed, the work is checked, and we sign off on it. Most of the material costs are usually lower than the labor cost.
Do we pay wholesale costs or retail, or do they mark it up?
I'm not sure. Cal.
Okay.
Do you have any other comments?
Not right now. Go ahead.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other comments?
So I have a question, because I think Stephanie asked a question that I was going to ask
Yeah.
in the very beginning of the meeting. What, can we define narrowly the possible action here? Like, what's the takeaway from this meeting?
Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, like I said, we have options that if we find that there are a lot of open-ended questions like that, and what I wanted Ron to get into also was, in addition to the cost and the spending, and maybe, the way in which the invoices are paid, then there are definitely other factors like how the job is bid, signed off on, permitted, because if they do work in the town, they have to get a permit, right? They might not have to pay a fee.
It depends on what category the work falls under. It's normal, just maintenance, repair work. No, we wouldn't require a permit for that type of work. If it's work such as the air conditioning system, rewiring that, the community center, the gantry and the toll plaza, the service points for the causeway, the bridge, the work that's being done on the bridge, 88th Street Park, all those things are permitted and they are inspected.
What's the difference between the kind of work that gets inspected by Darrell, our electrical contracted inspector, and things that our engineer Randy can look at?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Why would I, if it was a large job that required an electrical inspector, I wouldn't ask Randy to do that.
Right, because I know there are some things that,
I mean, I believe Randy could look at it, but
not all of them though.
no.
Like, obviously.
No.
So there's no criteria that you know of, or?
No,
Anybody?
I'm sorry.
maintenance work.
Do you use Randy to do inspections for anything in the town, like the formal inspections?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
But not electric.
Not
but
electric.
It would be, right-of-way work.
Okay.
That's all
Sewer.
regulated by the Florida Building Code, and whether or not, he's a PE, he's a professional
Yeah.
engineer,
Yeah.
so, there's-
Absolutely.
I mean, this is all,
Well, but some of the documents we were provided says, all electrical work to be performed is checked by Public Works Director. Invoices are checked and verified, and then signed off on.
Should have been Public Works, whether it's Doug goes and makes sure the work was completed. It's not as an inspection, but to make sure the work was completed.
Okay.
An electrical inspection, I have to tell you, for maintenance and regular ballasts, bulbs, pumps, generators, general maintenance items, I don't think any town requires permitting. It's just not the case.
Let me actually,
I'm not sure how this affects, how this is in the code, but
let me hit one thing, actually, because I seem to share the same sentiment as my colleagues as far as, I'm not sure what the end game is here tonight. However, I will say a couple things. I went through everything in the packet, I had read through all the details. A lot of this, we have to rely on you. We have to rely on the pricing. We have to rely on engineering. I can't tell you what the price of certain electrical equipment is going to be. I can't tell you what the pricing that, certain of these things are. When I looked through Tri-City, I didn't see the red flags that I think Kelly sees. I wasn't really as worried about Tri-City.
Well,
But what I'm saying,
I don't see any red flags either, and I didn't hear her talk about any red flags.
I understand, but that's what I think she's implying. So let me finish. I don't see any red flags. on that. I didn't see anything on there, and I think that's what the implication was. But again, I have to be able to rely on town manager, and I do rely on town manager to be able to say whether something is right or something is wrong. The only thing that did bother me, but I don't think it's something that rises to such a high level, I think it's something we do have to look at. Wire advice, there are some of the things in there, again, I can't tell you what they're worth, I can't tell you how, some of the specialized equipment is. But I went through a couple things that caught my eye, just to take a look at some things that I know the regular off-the-shelf items and what we're paying for. And some of these prices are extremely high on some of these things. For example, I remember there was one later on where it talked about, I think, 50 feet of HDMI cable, and they charged us, if memory serves, $255 for the cable. That's a $40 item. And this is not for install, this is just for purchasing. They were doing mounting TVs, $500 a piece. I just did one in my house with tax, $267. I'm just saying, this is not something that I think rises to the point where we have to trash the system, redo everything. But I do think we have to be a little bit more particular as far as looking at the individual invoices and seeing if we're overpaying for some of the equipment. We have to be careful with the citizens' money. And if some of these things we're getting nickel and dimed, eventually those nickels and dimes add up to real dollars. That's all.
And with Wire Advice also, how is it that we first got Wire Advice? I don't think it was bid out, was it?
Wire Advice was the company that our IT director before Miguel brought on board to help us at the toll plaza. Back in 2010, one of the problems we were having was getting vendors to come out and work for us, because most of our equipment at the toll plaza was really old, and the technology was old, and there was really no money in it for them to come out there and repair cameras and repair antennas. Wire Advice came on board through Miguel Ramos, and we've kept them since. We have had a service agreement with them, which we've continued to operate under. I find their work, again, very, very good. They've been used they do mostly low voltage, wire, IT, media, video, and those setups. They did the work in the chambers. That was really it. And that's how we've been using them.
So we've been using them, according to this agreement, since 2010.
2010.
And in the last 3 years, which is just what I asked for, it's over 200,000, more or less, we've paid
I'm not
them?
sure if it's over 200,000. I know I have invoices back. When you really look, if you look at what they were spent, it's mostly stuff that we needed for the town.
The total amount is irrelevant. If we needed it, we needed it. But the only key is whether or not we paid the right price. That's
And
it.
what I'm getting at is, if it met,
Some of the ones that caught my eye.
if it met the
255.
code, because if it was over a certain amount, then there should have been 3 bids. And maybe, just their entire arrival on the scene, I'm sure they're great, but still, there is a procedure, and other companies should have had the opportunity to bid and be looked at, don't you think?
I didn't say the other companies didn't give prices. I wasn't asked to provide that, or I don't know if that we have that in our records, but in 2010, this was the company we selected. Tri-City Electric we're doing work for the town for 25 years. I could not find in our records a service agreement with them. We've been operating with that, that they have been here. And I'm assuming at some point or sometime in the past, they were brought on for a reason and they were kept. I think the closest thing right now, after speaking with them to go through their records to see if they could provide something to us, was a record from 2002. After you made the records request, I asked them to provide us a service agreement that we could function under, and it's in your package. I know it's from 2017, but I'd rather have that than nothing. So.
Yeah, I think my point is just with these 2 examples, wouldn't it, according to the code, we should be bidding out and getting ideas about other companies out there more frequently, and isn't it just a best practice?
I disagree. I'm not disagreeing with you to disagree. I'm just saying the code on the open-ended procurement once you have selected it, it doesn't require you to go out to bid every year. It just doesn't.
Can I ask a question too? There seems to be, and so that the residents are aware, you're hearing these numbers, 600,000, 200,000. These are not singular invoices. These are cumulative amounts. The question that I have is, in the code, in the code, do we have anything that says once a vendor hits a certain cap over a certain period of time that we have to rebid the services they're providing? Because I'm not aware that that exists.
Well, no, but that's what I think the end goal is, that if we don't like what the code is saying,
Right.
that's, I think, what that's what we're here for. We're here to look at the code to see if we, I guess, agree to the code, if we like
It's not just the code, if I may interrupt, we're looking at the experience
Right.
of the town over the last several years,
Right.
based on the records that have been
Right.
provided to us to review before this meeting, and make the for the council to make a determination if somebody makes a motion as to whether we're comfortable with the practices with our vendors, and whether we think that those practices should be modified by then modifying the code. I mean, I'm not going to change something for the sake of changing it,
no, but
unless
I'm
there's
saying-
an overall consensus among the council that, that we could do it in a better fashion.
Yeah, but...
Right.
And I think
And maybe
generally-
save the town money and, and as you said, maybe Ron, or Frank, every so often rebidding and so forth, having, a time frame every 3 years, whatever the case may be.
I'll be honest with you, it seems odd that it's not in there. The thing odd about this, and I just never really looked at it until it really to now, was that the open-ended agreement, even though you're going to go over 10,000 and you're going to have a basically agreement, that it didn't have to go in front of the council, which was good or bad, I don't know, but that's just the way it was. I mean, but certainly any agreement could go in front of the council, and a time limitation is reasonable. We do it for other things. I think, but not to be drawn into, right now, it was expected that every year you had to go out and find vendors and do this exercise.
Yeah, but that's not of the opinion of the attorney, and I think that taking a little bit step further, that, I mean, the purpose is that, and this is for everyone's edification, our purpose on the council is to direct the manager and to enact legislation. We don't run the town, that's what you get paid to do. We depend on you and your staff to be professionals, to do what's in the best interest within the guidelines that we give you, and to make those professional decisions with your experience, and most importantly, make the right calls, save us money, and when work's done, not to have to go back and do it again. And, I've read, the information you provided and what was requested by Councilman Breed, and I mean, the real question is, did you make the right calls? And it's more than that. It's also about keeping us in the loop. For some of us that's been on the council a little bit longer, and you're the only manager that we've had since I've been on the council, but, I mean, my experience with you is you've always been forthright in telling us, not just during council meetings, and this is something that people in the audience that may not know, but, for example, in the town of Bay Harbor Islands, and not every city, actually most cities don't do this, we get what's called a check run. On a weekly basis, every single expenditure is given to us on a weekly basis. So every single time that Tri-City or any other company is paid monies, we are given that information. In addition, whenever we have projects and things come up, I mean, I can't tell you how many times that the manager has called me on my cell phone and said, by the way, just let you know, we have to do this, and this came up, and the contractor said this, and just want to let you know that we have to, I thought it was a good idea to underground the wiring on 98th Street because they're working on it right now, and the contractor recommended it, and we're going to go do this. What do you think? I said, that makes a lot of sense, because if we had to rip up everything, that would really be cost prohibitive. We probably wouldn't do that. And this is our opportunity, and sometimes I depend on you as a professional to make those decisions. And the reason why I mention it is because this is kind of like the backside of how our town government works, where we depend on you, Ron, and your staff to do things right. When it's more than just when the auditor says you did things correctly by the code. It's more important to me that the finance director, who actually was the one that made the recommendations to change the code, is doing things the way that he feels is correct. In addition to how you do things, the electrical inspector who's in the audience tonight and the building official are doing things to make sure that the people, the residents and the visitors are protected, because the work that needed to be inspected was inspected by someone licensed, and it was done correctly. My concern, and I've told you this privately, was, I think best practices is that when you have someone in a contractor procurement, that I think that you should go out and check the prices. I think 2 to 3 years is a valid point, and you did it in 2011, and you did it again this year when this was raised. So, that would be my one quote-unquote critique, but that does not warrant a special council meeting, in my opinion. So I would ask humbly if there's a recommendation from Councilmember Reed, because this is something that you requested, or you think that there's an allegation or something that you think...
I've made no allegations.
I know, that's what I'm asking.
Jordan, I just want to say something about that.
Please.
This goes back again to, any council member can ask for a special council meeting, so, you can have an opinion of whether it warrants it or not, but, I don't have an issue with calling a special council meeting. Along the lines of what you said, there were some of us in the room, Isaac, I think maybe you're one of them, and former council members, we used to come into town hall every 7 weeks and sign checks. We were one of the signatories along with the manager or the assistant manager or the finance officer and so forth. And my point is that even back then, when I had these stacked this tall and with all the backup on it, I basically relied on all of you, to let me know that it was appropriate. Every once in a while I would question something if I didn't know what it was. More often than not, probably a legal bill than an engineering bill or a bill for wires. But, no, but in all seriousness, seriously, I don't have the expertise, to determine, as Josh said, whether, 50 feet, the price of 50 feet of cable, for example. And so, as members of the council, I think that we have to rely on the staff to, and know that you are reviewing all of the invoices, which I assume you are, and I have no reason to believe that you're not, to make sure that you feel that they are appropriate and should be paid. And that if you have an issue with them, that you go back to the vendor or, whoever it may be, and question those invoices and investigate it. But I have no issue with, this evening's meeting.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
And reviewing and making a determination, because as you say, this policy was in place at the time that, you became the town manager and probably was followed by my predecessor. So, if the council thinks that if there's a particular motion or recommendation, then, I'm certainly willing to consider that.
Well, I'd like to go back to the code on open-ended contracts and this clause, competitive bidding requirements. So, because the amounts are higher than $10,000, just because it's an open-ended agreement does not relieve us of the need to get 3 written bids or price quotations. And that seems to be glossed over.
Frank, could you please answer?
We don't find that at all. I think there's an inconsistency with regard to that. Otherwise, you wouldn't have an open-ended procurement if you're rebidding it every single year. I just don't see it. Craig didn't see it.
Well, where's the competitive element then? Where's the competitive bidding requirement?
Well, in your code, not everything has to be competitively bid.
Right.
There are plenty of provisions in there that don't require it at all. So you could put it, if you wanted, for everything. It would probably not behoove you to do that. However, you could certainly even do away with that provision.
Frank,
Or
just so I know, I think what you're asking is, because it's over 10,000, we should be doing this every year. Is that
I'm
what you're
just
asking?
reading Section 3, under open-ended contracts.
No,
There's a difference between what's cumulative and what's per incident, correct? That seems to be what's...
This is a high amount, so it's going to be
We-
over 10,000.
No, without a doubt, it's over 10,000. We've been spending over 10,000 probably 20 years with Tri-City Electric. once you make this, the way I've read this code, or, I believe it, or was intended, was once you make the selection of the vendor, and you budget what you're gonna spend that year on that service, that's what you expect to work through. That you're not gonna bid out every job, or you're not bidding out maintenance
Do you
work.
understand what the number is?
And that's what we work from.
Frank, let me ask you something.
It's really important.
We can't...
This year, or, yes, I guess it's last year, back in April or May, we bid out a job for light pole, moving around light poles out in the causeway. It was after the gantries were all put. We had to realign some of the poles that were now stuck out in the middle of the field because we changed the roadway. I felt that job did not fit under the normal scope of services that Tri-City Electric gave us, or that I would rely on him. Not that they're not capable of it, but they're certainly not something I'm just going to call up the electrician and say, hey, listen, I got to move a couple of foundations, poles, and reset them and rework the lights up on the 30-foot poles. So we bid that job out. We received 3 bids. And I don't know if you have your codes in front of you, but under general, over $10,000, it has to be approved by the council. It was. We needed 3 written bids. We got those. They were reviewed, analyzed, rated, and then a report was written to recommend the low bid, which happened to be Tri-City. Tri-City came in at 12,000 and change. The next nearest one was almost 20. The next nearest one was almost 30. And I would do that again. I'm never opposed to bidding something out. I didn't feel it was a maintenance issue, and it felt like more of a special project.
Okay, let me ask you something, because Frank, because everybody here is talking about whether or not you should rebid and everything else when he's comfortable with a number and if he's already bid it. Is there anything that precludes an electrician or another electrician coming to the town and saying, look, we're new in the area, we will offer you better service and price, it catching his attention and Ron saying, you know what, maybe I'm going to bid out again and see if anybody else wants to do it?
Nothing prohibits that.
Right, so there's no point, one of the things here is that if somebody really thinks they can come and provide better support, they're welcome to come and approach the town, and then Ron can go ahead and rebid it again and open it up to everybody. That's really the key.
The question is ultimately, there seems to be a difference of interpretation. We have a legal opinion. I'm interested to see I'd like to hear what Isaac has to say about it because he is a CPA. But ultimately, I did also look at all of this, and I don't see anything that's concerning. I think the question ultimately is, do we just want to make it more clear, and do we want to change the parameters on it? And if so, what does that look like?
I'm interested in clarifying it. I always want us to be following our code. I don't want to loosen it up at all.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm not, Kelly, you're not an attorney, right? Well, let me rephrase the question. Are you an attorney, Kelly?
I'm not going to be cross-examined by you, Isaac, because you know what? I came to the meeting so you could
I
get insurance.
I want to talk now. I want to talk now.
Civility,
Let's
please.
try to...
I didn't say anything insulting, I'm hoping.
Well, you're being sarcastic. You know.
No, I'm not being sarcastic. I'm putting on record
Do you
that
know?
you're making a legal opinion about our code.
Wait. What opinion did I just...
Well, you're interpreting our code in,
what I said.
in opposition of what our own town attorney interpreted.
You're wrong.
But, okay, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. But anyway, I'm not sure what you didn't get out of Ron Rosson's letter. It's not dated, but I'm sure it was around the time of January that all this information was distributed to us. And in incredibly clear terms, he interpreted, he explained the way he interpreted the code to you, and then he went above that and beyond that to ask the lawyers for an opinion on whether he was doing things right or wrong. So let's not clothe this hearing about procurement in some type of, meeting in order to indict or embarrass our town manager. because, that's what I feel like is being done. Let me tell you, I'm a CPA. I looked at every invoice, or at least I scanned every invoice, because there was like 1,000 invoices here. And I really didn't see anything unusual. What Josh brought up about the HDMI cable comes in 16 different grades, and you could pay $40 for 6 feet of HDMI cable, or you can pay $6 for 6 feet of HDMI cable. So I am certainly not qualified to opine whether cable, 250 feet of cable is worth $250 or not. That's why we hire our town attorney, our town manager. He manages the town for us. We are here, one thing I agree with Jordan, we are here to legislate. We are not here to manage the town. If you think that the manager is doing a bad job managing, well, then this special council meeting should say exactly that. It should say, we want to talk about the town manager, that he's being negligent in his job, and you know what? You got all this beautiful information. God knows how many trees had to drop dead because of this paper. But let me tell you, I can't see a thing that says that this town manager is doing a bad job, because to me, it seems like he's not.
Well, that's not the title of this meeting, and if we can't have an open discussion about procurement when it's not clear and when this code is being interpreted, and there are times when we will get an opinion from the attorney, and we have options to vote on things. So, we've heard it many times, the attorney, with all due respect, Mr. Simone, does not legislate or run the town. And listen, I came here on 3 days' notice, Isaac, when you called a special meeting so that you could try to get insurance benefits for council members.
So that
No, it's not.
discussion here.
Well, it's an example.
You're going to talk
It's
about...
parallel, but you're attacking me, and I'm having an open discussion in the sunshine. And, we all have constituents, and maybe some constituents of mine have expressed concerns, and I wanted to bring it up. I think I'm being very respectful to Ron. I like Ron. I don't dislike Ron. We have... What'd you say under your breath?
Don't go on.
So, if you can't have a discussion about it, this could have been an agenda item. It's been almost an hour. It's just what I said, and we haven't even had public comment yet.
It could have been a private meeting between you and Ron to cure any of your curiosity.
Listen, we talked about the wire advice in the community center, okay? And how it became an emergency. So here we have this company that we've been using. He was just brought in without any kind of bid process. He's basically our sole wiring source, or it hasn't been determined. We're not sure. We didn't look that up. We just kind of go to him when we need things. It was an emergency, the $38,000 expenditure. Emergencies are defined as safety. Then we had a fire hydrant go down near the gas station on Causeway Island. It was down for months. That wasn't an emergency. That's a safety emergency. And I can't talk to you in private. So unfortunately, yes, it might be a little uncomfortable. We're all subject to it. I'm subject to have to listen to your uncivilized attacks.
I think...
want to move to public comment at this point, because I think
unless if
we've
anyone else
beaten
in the
this horse.
council has any other comments, we're going to go to that. Does anyone else? Okay, first?
Jay Meisner.
All right, Jay. All right, 3 minutes for every individual for tonight. Good
Jay
evening.
Meiselman, 10321 East Broadview Drive. First of all, you have no contract for services with Tri-City Electric. Okay, your service is a proposal to work at an hourly rate, not for services to be rendered. Your attorney, this is a contract from Tri-City Electric. You can read it. That's for something for $17,000. That's what we call a contract. When the attorneys reviewed it, the town managers reviewed it, and it's been approved by all parties. What's been called a contract, I'm not an attorney, are these 3 pieces of paper, 2 which were never signed by the town manager or anybody else agreeing to terms. Nothing in any of these gives any right to do time and material work in the code. Nothing. You spent almost $900,000 between two vendors over the last 3 years. In fact, one of the vendors, which is Wire Advice, was hired at $125 an hour to do low-voltage cabling. If you look at the letterhead, Tri-City Electric does low-voltage cabling. Extremely qualified firm. This is not about Tri-City. This is about giving out work for hundreds of thousands of dollars with no competitive bids. So you're paying some guy $125 an hour for wiring that Mike will do for $54 an hour. That's the way it works. There's a reason for this procurement schedule. Because as you said, sorry, pages are getting mixed up. If it reasonably expected to go more than 10,000, there ought to be competitive bids. Well, I would pose to you all, if your budget exceeds $10,000, you reasonably expect it to go more than 10,000. So your contracting is basically for the amount of your budget. So you have issued no contract for work this year, which you expect to be $199,000 based on a labor-only price. Sorry, I've done work for a bunch of you, and none of you in your personal lives do work like that. And it's not unreasonable. If you plan ahead, you can get bids for everything. But when your average price on labor and material is $3,000, $4,000, and $5,000, there's no reason Tri-City can't say to you, you know what? This is going to cost you $5,000. If it's less on a T&M basis, that's your price. But right now, everything is open-ended and you have no control. You averaged 1 year 430% of what you budgeted. 1 year it's 220%. You're blowing past your budget amounts and you have no contracts.
All right, next we have Victor Maya. And by the way, before you say that, just for the record, I was looking at what Mr. Maswin gave. Apparently, the hourly rate actually went down for the overtime by a few dollars, actually. So.
I'm sorry, can I ask you one question? I'm sorry. In there, you have in the agreement, which Ron's calling an agreement, if you see the hours that they're working, from 7 to 3 is the hourly working time, okay? How do you charge for hours you're not allowed to work in town? You're not allowed to work in town until 9 o'clock.
Yeah, but Jay, if it's an emergency and the bridge is
No.
up...
I agree on emergencies. This is not about Tri-City. This is about the dollar amount. But they're giving a proposal for hours that you can't work in town. And when you're saying they went out to bid for hours, for rates, there was no bid process. There was no RFP with a scope of work.
Okay.
I have no issue with Tri-City.
Right.
It's the way they're hired I have an issue with.
Thank you. Mr. Maya.
Victor Maya, 1155 103rd Street. The rate for Wire Advice is $175 an hour, not $125 an hour, and this was done back in 2010 for a one-year contract, which ends. It's only for a year. So they've been operating without a contract, for the last 5 years. And, with all due respect to our attorneys, who basically gave their opinion based on the 290 pages of the packet, because that's what he said that they relied upon, how they can reach the conclusion that they did is beyond me. If you look at the section on open-ended contracts, one part of this that everybody is missing is this. When it says a procurement for an indefinite quantity of goods and services in an amount reasonably expected to exceed $10,000 within a fiscal year is subject to competitive bidding requirements. That implies that at the beginning of every fiscal year, you make an assessment to make a determination. And then at that point in time, you are required to do competitive bidding. The whole point of competitive bidding is to find out what other vendors are willing to pay. And calling them up and saying, hey, what do you charge for this, or what do you charge for that? That's not competitive bidding. Competitive bidding is an RFP saying, hey, I had budgeted for X amount of dollars encompassing this work, this work, this work, and this work. What do you want to give it to me at? So if I call a company cold and say, hey, what's your rate for this? They might say, $10 an hour. But you're going to get paid, you're going to work 100 hours as opposed to 10 hours, they might say, it's only $5 an hour. Who knows? So what you have here is basically bypassing the whole intent of a competitive bidding requirement, which requires by its nature an RFP proposal so that everybody has it. Secondly, this MOU that was reviewed again by our town attorneys that said it fits everything and everything is good, has a provision in there that says that this agreement, can be terminated with 7 days written notice. And your code does not provide for any notice requirement in there. So it's just, can be terminated at any time without notice, period. There's no 7-day written notice period, that's in here. So I question, the validity of this, legal opinion. Time and time again, there's nothing been but rubber stamping, trying to put squares into pegs and round holes or whatever it is, all this mental, legal straining, to try to justify what is clearly a situation where we are not getting the best deal possible as citizens here on a budget that keeps going up. Thank you.
Next we have, no, let's have the public comments finish and then we'll finish up. Linda's over. Good evening.
Former Mayor Linda Zilber, West Island, 95th Street. I don't like to see dissension. I'm a Libra. So, if this 20-year-old law isn't so good, change it. If you can't do it all tonight, then have a meeting, work it out, and find out the best way you feel the law will work for you, and the best way it will work for you, it will work for us. So hopefully, that's what you'll do. Thank you.
Peter Evans.
Peter Evans.
Peter Evans from 9101 East Bay Harbour Drive, apartment 305. After listening to some of the comments with regards to receipts and the different companies that come in, one, I do that wiring, and after hearing how much you're paying those people, I would love to do those jobs because it's way over the top of what I get, and I'm not cheap. And also, with regards to the checking of receipts and invoices, I just spent yesterday on the phone to one of our major suppliers. I own a theatre up in Palm Beach Gardens, and we're recommissioning everything in it. Fire and extinguisher company came in, and their receipt, when I looked at it, was double what it should have been. And when I started questioning why there is labour charges on top of labour charges, and they were only in the building for 2 hours, and they charged me over $2,000. And with it, it was an agreed contract of $700. So this is what happens with different contractors out there, that they'll come in under a certain contract, but then they will find ways to double and triple the rates within the receipts. And unless you know what you're really looking at, you just skim past it. And as a CPA, you would only be seeing something at the end of the total, not every individual item. So with it, you need someone that's going to check each individual item. When you're getting charged $135 for a replacement of an exit sign, and you buy them for $25, that's a lot of extra money. And they didn't think I knew the prices, but I pulled out the box that I'd paid $25 each for. So these are the things that the town manager needs to really refine himself and find those extra expenses, because there are companies that are taking us for a ride. And I'd love to take you for a ride, because it sounds like I'd make a lot of money. Thank you.
All right, sorry, Annette, Rosenfield, yeah.
We lost our counselor. I'm hoping he returns. I had some comments.
But you can, I'm sorry, just ran out for a minute. If you want to pass and then wait for him to come back, I mean, you can...
He is returning?
Yeah, he probably went to the men's room.
Okay, why don't we let it, may I be the next after?
Sure.
Thank you.
The attorney? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Lorena.
Juan Llarena, 1155 103rd Street, and I want to applaud the hearings here, because I think that we all know that greed and selfishness is the human condition, and that it's everywhere. And I was a veteran, and I remember being told to throw furniture off the ship because they had a budget for new furniture, and the furniture was perfectly fine. So fraud, waste, and abuse is everywhere, and so these proceedings are very important. And as a resident of the town, I would expect, the dream would be to have people managing the town who manage it like they would their own personal accounts, and not just sign off on things. And I don't know, Mr. Watson, I don't know, you could be that person. I don't know you. But I hear comments from our neighbors here, and I see that we are being overbilled. That there are prices here that could be checked more carefully. So I think that's what Councilmember Reed is getting after here. She's not trying to attack anyone, so I applaud her. She is trying to protect the town and our expenses. So I hope that you embrace that, because I think that's what we expect residents here, and this is who we look for to vote for, is people that are going to watch out for us. Pass regulations, rules, laws that benefit us as residents. And for yourselves, we all live here. We all live in this little paradise here. So that's it, Mr. Watson. I hope that's what you do, that you check all these little things carefully.
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Rosenfeld? Come on up.
Hi, Annette Rosenfield. I reside at 10300 West Broadview Drive. I've lived on and off in Bay Harbor since I was 5 years old. I first of all want to thank Councilmember Reed for really standing up for our community. I think it's very courageous. I also want to thank Attorney Simone, because his firm has done an excellent job of laying out the framework of the municipal ordinances. But here's my concern and my question. And by the way, Mr. Salvo, I am a member of the Florida Bar, in case you want to challenge anything. And again, I'll defer to you, Mr. Simone, but one of my challenges is the overarching rule of Florida Statute, Chapter 211, 143, Spot 166, 241, controlling municipal budgets. Apparently, we're required to present a budget, which we do each year. However, what you can't do without public notice and a whole bunch of rules that unfortunately 3 minutes don't allow me to read, is exceed these budgets. The rules that have been provided at the municipal level are true and correct. However, they have led to a continuous situation, as Mr. Meiselman pointed out, of our town exceeding a budget on a regular basis on an unchecked, non-contractual basis of funds being spent. And we don't come back and do the 5-day posting and a whole other litany of things this statute requires to meet those standards. If we have a system where the town manager, who should have some unfettered, have some ability to operate on our behalf, is unchecked and unfettered, and we continually, year after year, exceed budget line items, we're in violation, it seems to me, of the statute. Now, my background is tax law and not municipal law, but I have a grave concern that unless we input proper control, that we will be in violation. And even greater concern, while oral contracts may be okay with supposed documentation, written memorialization by our town manager, it leaves us totally open to being sued by a provider who is in a he said, or he said, she said situation because they claim the oral contract was for a much higher value. We have nothing in writing. They can come in and claim a much higher work, and there's not much we can do about it because we didn't require anybody to have a contract, write it down, protect our community from, unscrupulous contractors who we trust and our manager gives oral approval to. So those are my concerns, the overarching control of the state statute, that if we exceeded budget, we needed to come back in procedurally and do correct things, and are absolutely unprotected from potential contractor suits. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can
I think,
Yeah, if I could just address one thing.
Please.
And just so you know, the state statutes actually address procurement, both in construction and commodities and contractual services. And that, just so you know, and you want to look it up in the future, is 287.057, among others. And so local bids are also governed by 255.20. Those are much higher thresholds than you've enacted. Yours is far more restrictive than what the state requires of you.
Mr. Simone, if I may ask,
No, this,
reference the budget excess.
I'm sorry.
Can I?
Yeah, I think,
I'm sorry.
yeah, I mean, let's finish I was going to mention this.
Kathleen.
Kathleen Kenny, please. And then we'll finish up with comment from council and staff.
Mayor, I'm sorry, I just wanted to address something, and I don't know if Alan wants to...
I understand where you're coming from, so...
Go ahead, Ron.
No, let's finish up the public comment.
First of all, I would like to thank the city manager for the emergency that we had on the King Concourse last Sunday. I think he did an amazing job. Can we all give a little shout out for that? Thank you. And I hope they don't check the price on that too, because it was overtime. I keep hearing all of you saying something that makes a lot of sense to me. You all ask what the end game is here. Well, I want to tell you what this end game is. It's election time. And you know what we do when it's election time? We're looking at TV land, and it's perfect timing for this nonsense to be coming up here when this could have been brought into Ron Wasson's office, sat down, and talked to. And the way it was done behind his back, a council person going in, getting paperwork for a constituent, and then scheming behind his back instead of just walking into his office and saying, I have a problem, can you explain it to me? I am the first one to have a fight with Ron, and some of you up here. Am I right, Josh? Am I right, Mr. Mayor? I think I've had a fight with everybody here. But you know what? I come straight to your face, and I ask the questions. Marlene and I, we fight too. Stephanie Brood, sometimes I don't talk to her for 2 months, and that's no lie. So, you know what? It's respect. And I think he's getting a raw deal. I think it's a witch hunt. And if the Honorable Mr. Meiselman, when he was on the council, why didn't he change this 20-year-old law? It's been... Well, I
2000.
excuse me, it's my turn now, please.
talk, get your facts.
Excuse me, I was told it was 20, and I got it from the source. So this 20-year-old law should be changed, and I think the city manager is doing an amazing job. His character, he's an ex-police officer. Kelly, you're an ex-police officer. I'm a mom of a police officer. We don't do things like this. This is below the belt. This should have been done in his office. Thank you.
I'd like to respond, please,
Yeah,
because
well,
I was called out by name.
I just want to say that this is the end of public comment, so let's finish up.
You know, I've been very respectful. This is called open government. I'm sorry that it's uncomfortable, and I don't go around behind anyone's back. We are empowered by the charter as council members to do investigation and research. We can talk to employees, and I have to tell you, since you brought it up, Mrs. Kennedy, one particular day I remember going in to pick up some documents and ask Mr. Short to print them out, and Ron was not there, because I usually stop by there first. And I went and I talked to Mr. Short. He magically produced them in 5 minutes, and then I went outside to my car, and I saw that Ron's vehicle was back. So I went in the front door again to talk to him, and you know what I found? I found Mr. Short standing in the doorway saying, "She's asking for records." So, I really am not sure what I have, which is why I wanted to bring it to your attention. It's not a witch hunt. I like Ron. I like pretty much all the staff we have. But I feel like it is really my duty. And you ask what the end game is. I wanted to hear all of you. I wanted you to hear all of them and see if it changed your mind. But I think that there's enough doubt with all of this. And I am not an auditor. I'm not a CPA. I'm not a lawyer. So I would like to see an independent body take a look at this. And our auditors, Markham, send us a letter every year, and it says, we will be, audit will look at internal controls, financial reporting. We will perform tests of compliance with certain provisions, laws, regulations, and contracts. However, providing an opinion on compliance with those provisions is not an objective of our audit. So I further called to confirm that. And I have contact with actually a lot of professionals in public administration, as yes, I did work in government. So I've been doing my research and asking around, and I got a lot of suggestions up to and including for us to order an independent financial, forensic audit rather. So that's an option. It is expensive. Then another colleague of mine told me that the Inspector General's office, who does this on a regular basis for the county, could possibly do it for us at a very reasonable rate if we enter in a interlocal agreement. And one very nice retired manager who I know, who's very prudent, he mentioned a few things to me. He says, I always ask the auditors to come and tear it up, look at it. I'm sure that you'll have no problem, because I'm not saying there is a problem. I'm saying I don't know. And I'm looking to you for help. And I have spoken to Ron, and I have spoken to Mr. Short. And I think we need to have a totally independent body. One of the suggestions was, how often do you change your auditing company? I have no problem with Markham. I think they're a fine company. But it was suggested that we should change the auditing company every 3 to 5 years, and in between, it was suggested that you ask that company to change up their team. So, and it was also suggested that when these annual reports come back and there are no findings at all that are odd, that everything is fine, that might be, a little unusual, because we all make mistakes. So I'm interested to know, if any of you feel the same way. And
Sorry.
yes, please.
No, I can say, I Kelly, I see what you were trying to do, and I appreciate that you were looking into the cost. I don't find the problem here. I don't see it. I will say this. I'm not in favor of spending additional dollars for an audit or auditing the auditor or going through along those lines. I do think one thing you did uncover, and I appreciate you for doing it. I think sometimes, and Ron, let me just ask you, because I go back to, I don't see anything with Tri-City. I don't see anything wrong there. Wire advice, I used an example on that Isaac doesn't, for whatever reason, agree, just pulling something, so be it. I'll let him have his viewpoint. My thought process is this, though. I want to know, just every once in a while, do you guys pick and choose, just do your own little internal audit? I mean, say by yourselves, because I trust you guys. Just say, look, they've got a listing of, or any company has a listing of certain equipment. Just, get on the computer for 2 seconds and just make sure you're getting about the right price for one or two every once in a while to make sure things aren't being essentially upcoded or whatever you want to call it.
I can't answer that question off the top of my head. I would have to ask them. I know...
Not them. I'm asking you if you do this.
Do I do it personally?
Yeah.
I think there should be something in the town maybe to, a reality check from time to time, taking invoices, at random and looking at the prices that were being charged.
Exactly.
For materials, or even looking at the time for certain projects, which, I think is beneficial to all of us.
We don't need a third party to do it.
No, I understand. I personally have never done that. I can't remember any time that I've done it other than...
So perfect. That's the end game here tonight. What we've learned here is just, I think it's helpful every once in a while. For something, like for example, the wire advice one, I go back to it because we were given, just so everybody understands, we were given essentially two main examples. I'm sure there's 50 different vendors of different things, but let me just say, the reason I'm pulling that one is just it's the one on top right here. But for example, that one, like you said earlier, and because I think we're all on the same page, or at least most of us, I think, you said earlier, you originally hired them out for the bridge. This was a specialized company that would deal with something specifically on the bridge. They do the other work, right. They do the other work, but they charge more because they were the only one willing to do the bridge, and they might do something else. It wouldn't have been a terrible idea to potentially look at alternatives, because they are on the high end for certain things. And I think, in the end, every once in a while, spend 10 minutes, look on a random invoice, not the company themselves, pick out a couple things that any invoice that any vendor has, and just make sure they're in the ballpark for the cost, for the equipment and everything else. If there's something that's not, you got your red flag and you go out and bid again. If you think they're on target, perfect, and we trust you on that. And that's the end game that I get out of tonight.
Yeah, we all question things that, when we have work done in our homes, for example, contractor, or whatever, you look at, and you want to pay a fair and reasonable price. And I'm not saying we're not at all. I'm just saying, that's why I raised that issue.
I don't want you to think we don't question anything, because that's really not the case. I argue with different people that do work for the town all the time. We just got something reduced, $20,000 on some engineering services that I need to continue out at the bridge, the CGI inspections for the bridge work. We've extended about 9 months, and we managed to get that price down based on, how much was spent, and, that we've been there, they've been with us for as long as they have. So we do look at those things. I don't think anybody's getting a free pass. I know the gentleman who got up and said he'd love to work for us. I don't know you, and you're welcome to come to my office and sit down with our IT director, and he can really tear out what you're talking about. And I don't think you're going to find this wild discrepancy where we're overpaying for things. So I think that's the only thing I kind of like. My takeaway is like, all of a sudden we're not doing any oversight. I appreciate, yes, I certainly will make that a practice of taking an invoice, or, I wouldn't know anything about cabling, to be honest with you. I have to find somebody to do that. Our director could do it and submit it.
Right. That's what I'm saying before, like 99% of stuff I couldn't tell you when they do specialized equipment. But, I read through the entire packet. I went page by page to see what I recognize of something that I know that I can get quickly online and see what's the price for the equivalent thing. And when I tested a few things, the prices were significantly higher in the invoice than what I could pick it up for. And one, like I said earlier, I had just put one in my own house, mounting a TV on the thing, and I pay tax, you don't, and I'm still at half the price we paid. So, just little things like that every once in a while checking, and I think we're fine.
Are you suggesting a motion are you proposing a motion that we have an independent audit?
Yes. Okay.
There's a motion.
And I would make a motion that rather than go to a private company, that we inquire with the county inspector general and see if they can bring to us an agreement for them, because these are two examples. This is, they're a little sketchy, really, and so who knows what else is out there. And Markham is telling us that this is not the kind of thing that they're going to be looking at. They're not going to be looking at our vendors. So why not just do it? Ron, it's not an offense to you. I know managers who invite it. And then you'll validate it, Ron. You'll get a great report, and then you'll be validated. There's nothing to be afraid of.
I don't even know what the cost of the thing. I mean, I wouldn't be in favor, because I don't know the cost, and right now, I trust Ron, and I would rather have him just, like I said earlier, just take a look every once in a while and take one or two things and see how far we're off.
The motion is to bring it to us.
But if he finds things, then I would be in favor of it. But right now, I'm not.
The question is there a second to the motion?
Is there a second? That's what I'm trying to say. Is there a second? Hearing none, the motion dies.
Just to go on, because I just did a quick search of 50-foot HDMI cable. On Amazon, it goes anywhere from $9.99.
I already did the search.
To $9.99 to $375.
The CPA and the...
So $49 for the top-rated one.
I did one for $272.
There's always one guy who throws the high.
We don't know that it's regular, like, for your TV.
Isaac,
there's like equipment that obviously.
I just want to say, broadcast studio, we don't need that quality.
Well, that's not 100% true. But all right, after Stephanie, I want to talk.
Thank you, Isaac.
Sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay, thanks. What I got out of this was that we need to look at our code, and I think that we need to maybe tweak it or modify it and clean it up, and there shouldn't be any, I think there's a lot of gray to it, and if we want to make any changes, whether it is going out to bid, date certain, every 3 years, every 2 years, every 5 years, that we need to clean it up, and we need to tweak it. And I think it's something that we all should think about, and maybe come February, we can have a discussion and come up with wording or ideas of how to clean up the code so that it's more crystal clear. I mean...
I have a few items I would like to clean up in the code.
Okay.
That would make it, would make it, I think, better for us, clearer for us, because, I don't want to sit here and there was a few comments from the crowd that I really had to bite my tongue on, and only because they're just reading raw data. I read the code. To run down invoices is, I can do that in my office and go one-to-one.
But for me, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an accountant, I read the code, and for me, there's a lot of things that are not crystal clear. And so I think for the citizens as well as for the council and for the people who work in the town, if we can clear it up and make the intent clearer of what it is that we want from the code, I think moving forward, it would behoove us to do that. And then if you have any ideas that you would add, or your staff, in your staff meeting, look at the code, see what it is that you also think you're ambiguous about. Simone, if you can come up with some things that you think is not, 100% crystal clear, and then bring it back to council in the next meeting, or as soon as we can, and let's work on this to make sure that the citizens as well as the council and the staff are all moving in that same direction.
I'd be happy to do that.
As a matter of fact, I literally just wrapped up last week helping Homestead with their procurement. And I'm happy to do it here, and you might be even happier, and I think we would make this a good exercise by doing that. I'm happy to do
Have some experience in regards to their procurement.
Jordan, one thing before you continue. Mr. Meiselman was on the council for 2 terms. He grew up here. He's a professional general contractor working over 30 years. And what you should know is he also takes the time to take thousands of pictures to try to help us when it's either landscaping or parts of the infrastructure. And he's really identified a lot of areas of improvement. And I want to thank you for that, Jay. And I think you had a burning desire to say something. Would you please entertain it? Would you please? Because listen, I called this meeting, and clearly there are people that have spoken to me and expressed their concerns, but I think we owe it to him for formally sitting on the council and for taking the time to do what he does, really. And please let him continue his thought.
No, I mean, we had everyone speak for 3 minutes. I don't think it'd be
Well,
fair
but this is my meeting, and I'd like to call him as
it's
a
not your
subject
meeting.
matter
It's a
expert.
special council meeting. It's
I
a
called
council
it.
meeting, but-
Well, I mean, I don't know what the objection is, you know, it's 8:30. I'm
Yeah,
sure
it's
in one more minute, we're not-
I don't want to be in
I
a
think it
position
makes
where...
sense to follow protocol.
Yeah, I don't wanna be in a
think
position-
We've gotten a lot of flack in the past, and particularly from council members that have sat here as well as people in the audience who have been upset that we have not at times followed protocols in our meetings. And it's been a distinct thing that every council member here has asked to better understand and better follow the protocols. And I get where you're coming from, and I respect that. But I do think that we can't make exceptions to things like that, and we do need to hold true to that, whether it's today or next meeting or the meeting after.
We've done it all the time. There's not a lot of consistency, but that's it.
What the
I
other
asked,
council members have to say rather than
Well,
having an
then at the
argument
end.
about protocol.
How many folks do we have in the accounting department?
3?
And,
3.5.
Alan, does someone in the accounting department review invoices before they're paid on some level? Or do we just get invoices, they're sent to, to accounts payable, and they pay them?
They are reviewed by the...
Alan?
Alan, please come on.
Hey, Alan, you could also address that other thing later.
Invoices are reviewed by the procuring department. Whoever is purchasing or engaging the service has to look at the invoice and sign off that it's appropriate and good to pay. Goes to the accounts payable, clerks review it. At that point, checks are cut, and they go before myself always for my review, and then either J.C. or Ron usually review, someone else reviews it too.
So, Alan, in your opinion, are we sufficiently staffed to handle the number of invoices that are coming through our accounts payable department? And in order to do it to your satisfaction?
I believe so.
And do you know of any problem that we have in our accounting department?
I do not.
Okay.
Can I address one?
I just want to mention, because Kelly, you had mentioned earlier that you have the right to inquire, and it's by charter. And it just so happens that I remember, my memory isn't that great, but I remember that the charter also specifically states that we, as a council, have one employee, and that's the town manager. And it also prohibits us, the charter prohibits us from talking or dealing with any of our town manager's employees.
You're wrong.
Okay, well, that's how I remember it, that we have one employee, it's our manager. If we have issues to deal with the staff, we have to go through the manager to do it.
No, we don't. You're wrong. That's completely wrong. Would you please correct him, Mr. Simone? Or I'll be happy to read it. I probably have the document here. I can almost recite it. The town council, for purposes not of inquiry, but investigation and research,
That's in the charter, but...
yes, it's in the charter.
But well...
Yeah, I think you are both somewhat right,
Yeah.
but certainly that you pick a town manager and the town manager picks all the employees.
Right, and we're not, although it sounds great, we're not sitting up here to audit invoices.
No.
And we are here to critique the manager in his role. And I think from from the comments that I've heard at this meeting, from at least 6 out of 7 people, that the manager is doing a pretty good job. If there's a problem that you detect, with the manager, or a specific invoice that you think is bad, the invoice, go to the manager. If you think the manager is bad, then come back to us and let's talk about the manager. But I certainly don't think we need any type of forensic audit. And, I think we really shouldn't take any additional action, because I think our procurement procedures, the way that they've been interpreted up until now, and confirmed by our town attorney, are working adequately. And, I think, I think we're okay, and I request that we have no change at all.
Okay.
Once again, I'd like to ask, because 2 months ago, we...
This is going to be a back and forth.
No,
I'd like
but-
to give, the rest of us haven't had an opportunity,
Oh, I'm sorry.
and you're
Go ahead.
responding to everybody.
You're right, Bob.
I'd like to give...
No, I just wanted to say that, I mean, I appreciate the fact that we're having this conversation, that, a council member has a concern. I'm not in favor of a forensic audit. I'm not in favor of spending taxpayer money on something like that at this point in time without, based on the information that I've received, based on your request, Kelly, and information that Jay has analyzed and so forth, and from what I've heard this evening. But I think that Ron and the town, and Frank Simone, our assistant town attorney, and other members of the council have acknowledged that there are gray areas in the procurement code and that there are certain ambiguities that it would probably be, a good opportunity to address. Frank has already volunteered based on the work that he's done at Homestead, to give us some advice on that, and I think we need to take a look at that. And Ron, I think you even said that it may not be a bad idea, to go out to the bid or get competitive prices on a more frequent basis and look at what we're doing. Sometimes we do get comfortable with vendors. I'm not talking necessarily about the ones that we're talking about this evening. I understand with respect to Tri-City, the institutional knowledge and the work that they do on the bridge and so forth, but I think that it's an appropriate time to take a look at the code, so.
Elizabeth? Do you have anything
I
else?
think I've spoken.
Okay. I would just say for the record, I mean, I concur and let me just say this, the comment that I made to the manager about, checking the prices every 2 to 3 years, that was actually, believe it or not, when I was in government, worked in administration. For those who don't know, I've sat in that seat in that job title, and I've had that job title before too. And I have to say that, in other municipalities, it's always good to check on best practices. We can always do things better. That advice, by the way, came from the head of the Ethics Commission at the time, where we should, as a best practices, check things, prices every couple of years, and I think that's proper. But again, this is something that is just something that can be done internally. It doesn't need to be codified into legislation. Certainly, most cities don't do such a thing. I don't disagree with the concept of refining the code. What my concern is, and this should be, I think, everyone's concern, is the manager doing his job as far as getting a good price, making sure that work is being done the way it's supposed to be done, making sure that when things have to be done on an emergency basis or bid out, that him and his staff are professionally making the right decisions. And in my opinion, this is a lot of information. I've read it, but I just don't see how, after speaking to the attorney, speaking to our auditor, I don't see the quote-unquote smoking gun. I don't see that. I mean, I think we're all cognizant, for those of us, that are on the council and even others have seen the budget. I mean, there are significant dollars that have been spent in these areas, and for good reason, because we've done a lot of work in the town since I've been on the council. I mean, we've done the infrastructure project, the bridge, the parks, we've done a lot of work. So, it's not a shocker or surprise when Ron goes over the budget with all of us individually and says, by the way, we're increasing the budget in this area because we need to do these things. And that's that means that you're doing your job. Had the budget been significantly lower and the costs went up, then that would be a different story. But I don't see how the relevance of bringing up the state statute, how we've gone over budget. On the contrary, we've been under budget. I think every year that I've been on the council, I know we've been under budget because we've always returned dollars back into the general fund.
That is correct.
So, I mean, and again, what I look for in a manager is communication. The concern of having a forensic audit, I don't think it's valid, and I can speak professionally from my own experience, having been an administrator that has written an agenda item requesting a forensic audit for my concerns in a municipality. I've done that. I've asked for a forensic audit before, and as it turned out, I was right. But that being said, if there is something that Councilmember Reed or anyone on this council, I'm always willing to hear what they have to say. And if you feel that there's something being done wrong, I mean, certainly a forensic audit implies more of a, I wouldn't say criminal, but more of a malfeasance or misfeasance, listen, there's appropriate agencies for that, or we can bring it to the council with proof, but this is just a tremendous amount of documents, but there's no tying it together. What Mr. Lawson wrote was to the point. So, that being said, there's no more comment. I know you want to make another comment.
Really, I know Alan wanted to answer a question about budget.
Sure.
Want to?
Absolutely.
The town charter and the town code allows the manager to transfer funds between line items within a department at will. So that, bottom line is, that means that the legal level of control is the department, not the individual line item. We do not exceed budget on the department level.
Well, we know that.
Okay, Jordan, with that, I'll move to adjourn.
Okay, have a second? All right, meeting adjourned at 8:39.